Hello everyone, welcome to the series of making production ready code. Today we will analyze our project requirements and try to map them to code using TDD. If you have missed my previous video on project repository setup, I have provided the link in the description below. Please go ahead and watch that video. It talks about our vision for this series, types of software licenses, and protecting the primary branch from unwanted merges. Cool, let's start. What is TDD? TDD is test driven development. It is the process of writing test cases before writing enough code. Consider test cases as various paths your code can take during execution of a piece of feature requirement. In test cases, you mimic or actually execute a piece of code and expect certain output to come. When this returned output is anything other than the expected output, you fail the test case. You can write test cases as granular as possible and as wide as possible. It means you can write a test case to test a certain line in the method or function, or a method itself, or a group of methods in different classes or modules, or entire feature itself. TDD helps your client and development team to gain trust on the code before it gets deployed to any environment. It is kind of a certificate given to the code. If you follow TDD practice, not only it helps to write test cases, but also improves requirement gathering skills. You start thinking about all what and what if cases. Example, if you are developing a REST API, you start thinking about what does the API signature look like? Should I use query parameters or path variables? What goes inside my headers, cookies, and other parts of my request? What should be the response structure? What will be the response if server can't connect to database? What if there is no content to display? Is API versioning needed? What kind of security is needed? How does the API behave in case of different HTTP status codes or exceptions, etc.? TDD changes the way you model the code. All the design patterns make sense if you ask one simple question to existing code. Is this particular piece of code easily testable? If not, you can think of modeling your code to support testing. There are many standard practices which are used to simplify writing test cases. Example, single responsibility principle. That is, a method or function or even a class should only perform a single piece of responsibility. Example, let's say your method says validate. It should only validate and not update any database. Next, open close principle. That is, your code should be open for extension but closed for modification. Inversion of control or simply IOC, etc. All such principles deserve a separate series of videos. Please stay connected to this space to get notification of all those videos. Before moving to TDD, there are few more testing patterns that you should know: TDD and ATDD. TDD, which we are covering in this video, is more developer oriented. It means the developer writes test cases to answer, is my code working as expected? Hence, TDD influences lots of code design decisions. On the other hand, BDD, which is behavior driven development, and ATDD, which is acceptance test driven development, work mostly on behavior and acceptance criteria of the feature respectively. BDD and ATDD help project managers and business to define high level behavior of the feature and document the feature. There are tools available which help to write test cases using BDD and ATDD, example Cucumber, Robot Framework, etc. Behavior driven development and acceptance test driven development are not in scope of this series. I will post separate videos covering these concepts. There are different types of test cases you can write. For example, unit tests. These are helpful for testing each unit in a flow. Note, definition of unit can change based on your team. Some may say a unit is equivalent to a method, and others can say it is the logical condition in the method. These test cases should be quick in execution. Integration tests. These are mainly used for testing different components in the code and their interaction. Sometimes it can involve databases, caches, and any other data store or stateful services. These test cases take more time to execute than unit test cases. Next, end-to-end tests. As you can guess, these are meant to test entire flow of a feature. It can involve UI and may need all the dependent services up and running. Sometimes it may need a separate infrastructure setup as well. If you go by definition, unit tests and integration tests have high impact on code structure. Hence, as per me, those are part of TDD. There are few other types of testings. For example, security testing, penetration testing, performance testing, etc. These have very less impact on how to model the code. Hence, we will not cover these in this series. In this video, we will try to create a few unit test cases, and as our project progresses, we will add integration test cases based on needs. To write unit test cases, you have to think about the basic skeleton of the code. For example, which classes, methods or functions should be created, which method should be included in which class, package or module, what is the core responsibility of the classes and methods, etc. Every good programming language has libraries to support writing test cases. For example, Python has unit test, nose or nose2, PyTest as testing libraries. NPM based languages like Node.js, Angular have Mocha, Chai, Karma, Jasmine, these libraries. Haskell has HUnit. And similarly, Java has JUnit, TestNG, REST Assured, and many more. And the list goes on. We'll use JUnit for our case. Awesome. Now let's jump into our animal information portal. Let's analyze few business requirements. Our project should expose web APIs to get information of all animals and get information of a single animal. These are very broad requirements. Let's analyze those and ask few questions which will help us to write few test cases. Both APIs have lot of common doubts and questions which need clarifications. One can ask, what should be the structure of my endpoint? Is it a GET request or POST request? Is versioning needed? Is API security needed? What is the output format? What data should be written as per the response? If there is no data, or if application throws any error, what is the expected response? All these questions are from end user perspective. There will be questions from application architecture. For example, database structure, caching, etc., which we will cover in upcoming videos. Let's assume we have clarifications from business, and those are as follows. For getting information of all animals, we have to develop an API with get endpoint as /API/v1/animals. Here v1 is the version of the API. API security is not needed as of now. This will mostly be not the case in real applications, but for simplicity, let's assume our API will not be secured. API accepts two optional request parameters. First one is the type of animal, example cat or dog, etc. And second one is the breed of animal. Both parameters should have minimum 3 characters if provided in the API. If no parameter is given, return all animals. If the application is able to search animals in the database based on parameters provided in the URL, it should be written as JSON structure. It must have documents containing one field named animals. This field is a list of basic information about the animals. Each element in the list contains unique ID of the animal, type, breed, name, and the URL of profile picture of the animal. If there are no animals found as per parameters, response status should be 200 and body should have JSON containing animals field having empty list. If any parameter passed is not valid, then return 400 bad request HTTP status code and JSON containing code of the error and description of the error. For getting information about a single animal, the endpoint should have get method and URL structure should be as /API/v1/animals/animal ID. This animal ID is same as the ID field written in get all animals API. If an animal with provided ID is found in the database, then return 200 status code along with JSON containing information of the animal. This information should contain unique ID, type, breed, name, URL of profile picture, description, and list of features of the animal. Features field contain a list of key value pairs of animal features. Example, name can be color, value can be brown. If no animal with given ID is present in the database, return 404 not found HTTP status with JSON containing code of the error and description of the error. Now we have basic requirements and API contracts with us. Let's quickly set up project structure and try to see how we can write test cases to test API contracts. I am using IntelliJ for the development. Yeah, as you can see, this project does not have anything development. So let's quickly go to start.spring.io and create basic project structure. Let's create a Maven project and I will give the group name as portal and name as animals. Rest are okay. Let's add few dependencies. I'm using Lombok and Spring configuration processor. I will add one more dependency, Spring Web. Now I will generate the basic structure. Yeah, it's downloaded. I now have to extract it and add it to my IntelliJ. Now if I go to IntelliJ, I can see this basic structure. For the first time, it can happen that your project will not be recognized as Maven project. So what you can do, you can right click on POM and then you will get add as Maven project option. Once you add it, all the dependencies required and whichever you have added will get imported. All the API contracts that we want to develop as per this project in the README file. You can view the README file and it will look like this. Let's get started for development. In the resources folder, if you see, we have properties file. I am not very fond of properties format. What I'll do, I'll delete it and will create YML format file for properties. And we'll add a few basic properties we'll be using. My animal information portal will run on 8081 port. And as if you remember, the requirement of our project is to create these APIs slash API slash v1 and slash API slash v1 slash animals. So I'll use slash API as my context path. And for testing purpose, I am using debug logging. In production, you should not use it. Application class just to see if all the configurations are correct and are in place. Yeah, the server is running, so it means all the dependencies are resolved properly and we are ready to go. Let's create testable API contracts in code. I am following MVC pattern for developing this project. First, I'll create a controller package and a controller class. Now I'm creating package for presenters. First animal, all animal request. Here the request can have type and breed. So let's add those. I will also add the representation, which is the response of this controller. Now, as per our API contract, it should be a document containing one animal key, and this key will have array of all the animal information. To hold all the animal informations, let's create a basic animal information class. It will have ID, type, breed, name, and profile picture. Now I will create array of basic information. Done with request and response of getting all animals. There are few tweaks remaining. For example, if you see this basic representation, oh sorry, not this. If you see all animal request, type and breed, we have restriction that it should have minimum 2 characters. We will get to it, but first we will write few test cases and then we'll try to improve our code. We can go to controller and finish the stuff. Testing purpose, let's add one service layer for our service. When you write an interface, in your test cases, you can implement this interface as per your need and you can return any response from this service of implementation. And this way, you can mock this service and get the required output or required test cases. For example, you can throw exceptions from it, you can throw null object, you can throw empty list, all sort of things which you cannot do with the real system. We don't have to implement it as of now. We can write concrete implementations when we get to it. Let's auto wire animal service. Our controller is ready. We'll write few test cases to test it. I'll go to test package and I'll create a new package for controllers. Create a new class, get all animals. Now it's a Spring project, so I will annotate it with web MVC test. Now this is very important point. I just want to test my controller part of it. I could have used Spring Boot test package test annotation, but what it does is it loads the entire context. And as I said, unit test cases should be as quick as possible. And if I load entire context, this can slow down my unit test case. So as I just want to test my controller level validations, I'll use web MVC test. I will add the context path for my API. I'll auto wire mock MVC. This will be used to create a mock server, and then using that we can test our APIs and the responses that our APIs can give. I'm also creating a mock of my animal service. Yeah, it is important to note I'm using mock bean and not mock, because this animal service is auto wired in my animal controller. Hence, I have to use mock beans, and it is recognized by Spring while testing. If you don't want to do it, what you can do, you can pass animal service as constructor argument to it. For example, like this, and then you can add auto wire here. Now, if you use this approach, there are two advantages of it. You can use mock bin, or you can just simply use mock and test it. In my case, I don't want to write implementation of animal service, so I will keep on using mock bin. We can continue. I'll create a sample animal response, all animal response, and this can be used for testing in all the test cases. I'll try to load it before any of the test cases. As you can see, as I have used Lombok, I can very well use um, builder pattern here to initialize my response. Oh, I think I missed breed, so I'll add it here. I'm ready with my mock response. Let's write first test case, which will return success if no parameter is provided to the API. Even if with that, it should return success HTTP status code. Let's write test case for it. This test case is for version 1, since I have just named it as version v1. I am mocking uh, animal service response. So if animal service response dot get animals is called with any of the parameter matching all animal request class, it should return me the response that I have created. Let's initialize server. Now from this server, this mock MVC, I am calling a get request because that is the requirement of our API. It should be a get request on this particular URL. Once called, we should expect it to return success status is okay. We should also expect it to return JSON content type, and it should have JSON response and with animal key. It should be an array, and it should have size as 2. Nice. Let's now test this test case what we have written. Nice, it is passing. Let's try to fail it. uh, will we are expecting bad request, but it will not return, so it will fail. Let's see what happens then. Okay, it is failing, and it is saying it is expecting 400 status code, but it is returning the API is returning 200. That's okay. I mean, we just wanted it to fail. What I wanted to point out, this this is not an intuitive name which you can directly infer to what this test case is doing. So there is very handy way of giving a display name to your API. Let's say we will call it as should return all animals if no parameter is given to API slash v1 slash animals. Now let's run it again. Yeah, now we are getting proper message in the log. Show you how you can test individual element in the JSON path. Yeah, so if I want to test zeroth element's name should be dog1, because in the response if you see the zeroth element has a name as dog1 and it should return okay. Nice, it is passing. Which are there for getting all animals request API. Let's go through all the test cases that I have written. If uh, if my if there is no animal found, then also my API should return okay. That is one of the requirements. So what I have done here is I have passed as empty list, basically empty list to animals as whenever get animals is called. So what I'm expecting is okay status with media type should be JSON. There should be animal key and it should be an array and it should have 0 elements. Next one is if type has more than 3 characters, then also the API should return okay. So this is the check for it. Similarly, if type has exactly 3 characters, then also it should return okay with the data which is matching. So I have mocked the data and I'm just verifying if the data which is mocked is returning properly with the okay status. Now this is the failing point, where I'm assuming that if type has less than 3 characters, then my API should give bad request and it should give me a JSON containing code and description. So this is one of the requirements. And similarly, for breed, if it has greater than 3, it should return okay with animals array. If it has exactly 3 characters, it should return me with the data and okay status. If it has less than 3 characters, then also it should fail and it should give me code and description of error. I got this result. All animals, this API was passing. Then uh, breed, if breed parameter has greater than 3 characters, if type has greater than 3 characters, all those are passing. The failing test cases are the bad request test cases because we haven't done any programming with respect to it. So as you can see, we already have API contract written in code and our test cases are reflecting exact state in which my code is. So without writing enough of code, I am able to test my entire scenario and I am getting 2 failed test cases. Now we will try to refactor our code and we'll try to pass all the test cases, and once all the test cases are passed, I can be sure that all the requirements which are asked from business are fulfilled. Is getting information of a single animal. I'll quickly write controller service presenters and test cases required for it, and we'll see the result of it. This may not be a proper solution to have both the APIs in the same repository. You can very well create a separate repository for getting a single animal information. In my case, for simplicity, I am having both the APIs in the same repository. But yes, in actual scenario, in production scenario, you can very well have two separate repositories. Two different repositories for for two different APIs. It has its own benefits. For example, This API, this particular repository, when gets deployed, can have its own life cycle. Plus, when you deploy it as a container into any cloud based containerized environment, you can specify how much memory and how much CPU that particular application or the particular piece of API will need. We will come to that as we progress into our project development. But yes, it is beneficial if you create two separate repositories in the production deployment. Here is the controller to get information of a single animal. It is a GET request. We are accepting animal ID as a path variable, and then this is the construct to access the path variable. I am passing that path variable to animal service. I have written down one extra method inside animal service which accepts animal ID and returns animal detail response. This animal detail response extends basic animal information because it needs ID, type, name, breed, and all this basic information along with description and features. These are two extra parameters or extra attributes that it can have. And then these are Lombok related stuff. I am just setting all the information to super and then description and feature inside this particular detail response. So this is the API. Now let's go to test cases of this particular API. Same as get all animal URL, we have a static base URL attribute. We have initialized mock MVC, mock bean as animal service, animal detail response, and this is the response that I am expecting if in case of OK status. And this is the test case. API v1 animals and animal ID should return animal information if the animal is present in the system. So when animal service dot and get animal is called with parameter 1 or the animal ID as 1, we should get animal response back. Okay, we see I am performing a get request to get information of a single animal with ID 1. I am expecting OK status with application JSON as content type, and these all variables and all the attributes in the response I am expecting. And there is a test case. Let's say if animal is not present in our system, we should return 404 HTTP status code and with code and description in the response. So this is the test case for it. If there is no animal, as of now I am returning null, and I am expecting that status should be not found, content type JSON, and code and description in the response. These test cases, let's see what happens. Now as we can see here, because we have basic API controller available in the code, the first test case to get animal information is working as expected, which means we are getting all the attributes in the result as we want. But the next one, which says the code should fail, code should say the API should return 404 if there is no animal. This test case is failing because we haven't written anything. Test cases for both the APIs without writing enough code. We just have controllers and there is no business logic associated with it. Even with that, we are very well in place with with all API contracts and the conditions that were given to us. In upcoming videos, we will see how TDD impacts code architecture decisions. For now, let's push our code to repository. This is a very important step. If you lose this code in this current state, you will have to write everything from the scratch. Master. So these files are not added. I'll add those. Now there is a new branch created with the name of this current branch. In the next session, we'll try to pass all test cases which we have just written, and we'll also set up a basic CI pipeline in GitHub for this project, which will run all the test cases whenever a pull request is raised. If it fails, we will not allow code merge to master. Stay tuned for the next video. Thank you guys. Bye.